Okay, guys, I'm with Ross, and we're about to review a 2018 Golf R. And this is going to be the most biased review Ross has probably ever done. And that's because Ross owns
2017 Golf
a
R.
2017 Golf R. So give me your unbiased opinion, Ross.
Oh man, should you buy one? Would I buy one? Yes. I did buy one. I love this car. It's been really good to me. There's some neat things that have been changed for 2018. There's new front and rear fascias, a new digital cockpit, a new transmission, although the new transmission is a 7-speed DSG, mine is a 6-speed DSG. This actually has a 6-speed manual, which is going to be kind of neat for me because I've never driven a Golf R in anything but DSG. So although I was excited to sample the 7-speed, maybe the manual will make for a more interesting video and a more interesting contrast.
So Ross, tell me a little bit about the performance of the Golf R and why you chose it.
Why did I choose it? Obviously I wanted more performance. I wanted to step up from my Civic Si, 200 horsepower, love that car, but I was ready for more. But I didn't want to just repeat the experience. I didn't want to be thrashing myself around with a stick in traffic. I mean, obviously, you know, traffic around here is pretty brutal. And this job kind of ruined me. I have driven so many neat cars with these lightning fast DSGs, plus turbo, plus all-wheel drive, that I really wanted that experience. So, give me one sec. All right. So for me, it was an easy choice. I didn't want something that was like a boy racer again. I kept my old boy racer car, so I wanted something more mature. And if that's what you want, the Golf R is the only choice in the segment. No disrespect to the Focus RS, Civic Type R, WRX STI, the Evo is gone. But you know, those are all really rough, pretty much track-ready cars. And I wanted something a little more luxurious. And
Yeah, the Golf R has a lot more manners, a lot more, you know, sort of everyday livability built into it than those cars.
Yeah, a buddy of mine had a like an '07 A3, and this is a more luxurious car than that. It's a baby Audi or junior Audi, whatever you want to call it, in every way. I mean, even the drivetrain is straight out of an Audi S3. So, kind of hard to say that it's still an economy car when you drive it. It has a lot of luxury, a lot of features, a lot of performance.
Yeah, I totally agree. The line is completely blurred between economy and luxury at this point. The line is actually gone in most cases, and especially as you just pointed out, this is mostly a different body on top of an S3.
Yeah, pretty much. And a more practical one at that. A hatchback. You know, I have a big dog, I have a kid. Take a little pan around in my car, you'll see it's very much lived in. So to me, it reminds me a lot. I know I'm going to take a lot of SHIT for this, but it really reminds me of like sort of a poor man's 911. You know, you use a 911 for all kinds of things. It's a practical car, and it's the most practical, usable shape, layout, whatever you want to call it, in its class.
All right, so this is where Ross has already begun to introduce his bias. He's comparing a Golf R to a 911.
By this time, this car is a known quantity. You know what you're looking at. What we're here to talk about really is the changes for 2018 versus 2017, and you know, if it's worth trading up or whether you should buy one. Obviously, my answer is yes. The biggest difference, and this kind of was a little bit of a burn for me because it happened right after I bought mine. They cranked up the warranty from 3 years and 36,000 miles over here to now 6 years and 72,000 miles. Right after I plunked down $1,000 to extend my warranty to a whopping 4 years and 60.
They did that across, VW did that across the board, and they needed to because they were suffering some warranty issues, and they were suffering from, you know, Dieselgate and other things.
Yeah, Dieselgate was the big thing, so they introduced the new warranty for SUVs first to get people buying the new Tiguan and the new Atlas, and then they just extended it across the board. So, obviously you can tell there's a couple of visual differences right off the bat, and the biggest one that I like about the new car is that over here you can see, here's the sensor for my adaptive cruise control, and it's gone out twice already just by being hit by rocks and road debris on the highway. Over here I'm not even sure where the ACC adaptive cruise control sensor is, and I had to double check the window sticker here, but it absolutely does have it. So they've done a clever job of hiding it, and should be a lot less, I guess, dangerous for the sensor. So that's one thing that's not just a cosmetic improvement, but would really, I think, enhance the quality of life if I were to trade up.
So what else is different on the front end?
Front end,
Wheels are different.
The lights are a little bit different. My car has, is the
Oh, yeah,
fully
yeah, I can
loaded
see.
model, so I have the nice lights with the lighting package and all that stuff too. So there is a slight difference here, just slightly different styling. Looks a little more edgy, a little more modern.
Yeah, it does look a little bit more modern now when we compare.
The R doesn't have fog lights. That's one thing that a lot of people don't know. You get the fancy light option, but you don't get fog lights because you need venting for the bigger brakes. So they've redesigned the brake vents here. I'm assuming they flow better, who knows, but here are the old ones. They just look a little more basic, a little more
Yeah, I can see your
2017.
intercooler through that duct there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And then what did they change on the back? Because that's the only extra. I mean, we've got the...
There's new wheels. We don't need to look at my wheels because they're not stock, but they do have a new wheel option. They have 3 different tire options, and you don't get to choose. You either get a Continental or I think a Pirelli and something else.
What else is different back here? Anything?
Less so than the front.
Yeah, they're almost identical.
Different tail light styling, but that is it.
Okay.
Wipers
I don't know why,
the
for
same.
some reason, I thought there were more styling changes back here.
This is the same. I mean, that's, it makes sense, right? This is how Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche do things. Their styling is always very evolutionary. They don't, they don't fix what's not broken. So you have to look really, really carefully to spot the changes, and you have to kind of be a Volkswagen person, I guess, or an owner at least.
So the big changes really are the dash. So let's talk about the dash.
Yeah. The big changes are, in my opinion, most significant are the digital dashboard, no longer warranty. All right, sorry about the beeping, but I really want to show you guys the new digital dash, and I don't think I can do that without starting the car, so just bear with me, okay? All right, so we've got the parking brake on. I can release the brake. That's still really weird, by the way. It has the newfangled electronic parking brake with the old style transmission. I mean, if I'm gonna get a stick, I really want to yank the parking brake and have that, I guess, that old school feeling of knowing the car is not going to move, but it works. And there's also the auto hold function, so we're going to put that on as well. Anyway, you get a whole variety of menu options here for the digital dash. So you move through the menus with this little thingy here. Lap timer, driving data. This is where I usually leave the selection on, and then you can just go through. You got speed warning, oil temp, which is really helpful, economy, average economy, range, travel time, distance, all that kind of stuff. Assist systems, you can play with your ACC and your lane assist and all that stuff there. Navigation, this is the really cool part. So you can hit this button here and sort of minimize the gauges and maximize your map. The only problem is, and Charlie, you and I figured this out, it has a really nice Android Auto and Apple CarPlay interface, but that stuff doesn't come up here. So if you want to use nav in this digital dash, you need to use the Volkswagen nav, unfortunately. The other kind of crappy thing is that once you plug in your phone down here in this extremely inconvenient location, you don't really get anything up here as far as track info or anything like that. It's a very, very, very limited display. So the idea of this giant screen and the digital dash is, I think, a little cooler in theory than it is in reality. It's not by itself enough to get me thinking, oh man, I really need to upgrade. But it's just one more sort of neat thing. If you're looking at the improvements from 2017 to 2018, it's definitely Obviously an improvement, but it's not quite as perfect as you would want.
Yeah, there's still some work to be done with Apple and with Google.
Yeah, I don't know how long they're gonna. I have to put the window down. It's hot in here. I don't know how long they're going to keep this refreshed Golf around. I think the Mark 7 started in 2015. So they had a Golf R in 2015, 2016, 2017. They kept making small incremental changes, made a big one for 2018. Now it's called the Mark 7.5. Obviously there's going to be one for 2019, but we're already talking about the Mark 8 GTI hitting Europe pretty soon. So whether there will be a 2020 of these, I'm not sure. Anyway, but if there is, let's hope that they kind of upgrade and tweak this interface a little bit so that you can really enjoy, I think, the potential of it. Because it's really cool, but and I think we were both a little disappointed to know that you couldn't really get any detailed audio info up here, or your Waze, Google Maps, Apple Maps. That won't display here either.
Ross, so can you go over the competitors again and why you would choose to buy a Golf R over? Because I think there's some really interesting aspects, and now that we're talking about the interior and some of the features inside and the luxuriousness of the Golf R's interior, I'd like to get your input on that.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It is, I guess your nominal competition would be, Golf R versus Focus RS versus Civic Type R versus WRX STI. And for the 300 horsepower plus, I like to call them super sport compacts, I think that's pretty much it. So let's just start with those four. I love the Civic Type R. Obviously, I'm the world's biggest Honda fanboy, which is weird to say now that I'm driving a Volkswagen and we're in this VW video. But, I love the Civic Type R. Obviously, a lot of people don't love the styling. For me, the deal breaker was no all-wheel drive and no DSG. It would have been sort of a lateral move in terms of jumping into another front-wheel drive, 6-speed manual, limited slip, differential Honda. Too much like what I already had, and I was kind of ready for something. I don't want to sound too sort of old-fashioned, but this is a car that you can sort of slip past the wife as maybe an alternative to like an SUV. You can say, hey honey, and this is exactly what I did. Hey honey, you can drive this anytime you want. It's got all this cool safety features. It's got nice leather interior. It's got an automatic transmission. She doesn't drive stick. I think a lot of guys' wives, prefer not to at this point. You can throw your groceries and all your stuff and the dog and whatnot in the back. It's an easy family car. And from everything I've read, the Civic Type R is a really nice driving car. And is practical in that sense. Like it's not like the Focus RS or the STI where they're just so raw, so racy that it's legit hard to drive them on the street. The Civic Type R and the Golf are always come out on top as the best street cars. I'd have to drive the Civic Type R to find out, but I've had enough experience with Hondas to know at this point that if you want usefulness, it's one of those two. It's the Honda or the VW, and I'm telling you why I picked the VW over the Honda. It's the available DSG, and it's the all-wheel drive. This is a 4-season sports hatch, whatever you want to call it. It can do literally anything. And, if you want to drive your parents or your in-laws or anything around, go ahead. It's easily the best choice. All right, let's see if I can get up this driveway without stalling it. I just stalled. There isn't that much feel in the clutch. I do still have a manual transmission car at home, so it's not like I've forgotten how, but here we go. Driving impressions, man. These cars are so, I'm going to touch again on the stuff that I've said before, but they're very much Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche. They're in that style. They're so docile on the road as to almost be boring. So they're so easy to drive that they can be a little bit boring. I think a lot of people want a car that really thrashes you around, and if that's really what you're after, I think the Focus RS or the STI is maybe your car. But And look, I'm getting a little older. My next birthday is 38, if you can believe that. I'm not into a race car with plates anymore, at least not to drive every day. So, I mean, I keep going back to, this was the perfect car for me. It's the perfect car for a lot of people I know. This is an extremely popular car in this area. Maybe that has something to do with Volkswagen being here, but I see them a lot. And they're so useful every day. It's never the kind of car where you're like, man, it's just too impractical, I gotta get rid of it. The only problem with mine is it's just expensive.
Can you tell me a little bit about the 4Motion system?
It's invisible. It's, you know, the STI and the Focus RS, they have these sort of full-time, really active rear diffs. I mean, the Focus even has problems with overheating its rear drive unit. That's one of the things that turned me off to those. But the 4Motion's invisible. I mean, it just feels like a really fast front-wheel drive car that never loses composure. I believe it's an open front diff. I'm not totally sure. And if you really want to, you can go look up, you know, how the second gen Haldex or whatever gen we're on has been improved. You know, it senses slippage at the front, sends things to the rear. I'm not a mechanic, but in practice, it's invisible. The car is extremely sure-footed, but it doesn't feel like an all-wheel drive car, like maybe, let's say, an S4 or one of the RS Audis, or, you know, a Mitsu Evo or something like that, where you can feel the rear working and wanting to rotate. It doesn't work that way.
What does the sport mode do on this?
You know, that's a good question. Okay, so we are in race mode. This is pretty much how I always have the car. It makes the exhaust louder. It firms up the adaptive suspension. Let me see. I think it adjusts the steering as well. So there's actually a lot of adjustability. That was another thing that attracted me to this car. Although I think at this point, all the other ones have some form of adjustable chassis and engine and transmission behavior. That's another reason why I would say this car really is best with the DSG and not the stick, because adjusting the modes of the car will also adjust the transmission's behavior. So, like in my car, comfort mode is very nice, very smooth, but then you put it in race and those shifts are like bang, bang, bang. We're not here to talk about my car, but that's one reason I would recommend buying the DSG. I think this car is built for the automated manual transmission, and it makes the transmission a player in the adjustability of the chassis, whereas this 6-speed is, yeah, it's nice and old school, but it doesn't play along when you start adjusting the rest of the car. It is what it is. And for some people that's good, but for me it's not. So this video's gone on long enough. We got to wrap it up. Not even going to bother doing a stand-up. But, I mean, look, obviously I bought one of these cars. I'm not the kind of guy that buys a new car every year or two. I mean, really, it's every 5 to 6 years. So I really have to consider these things carefully, and to me this was just the best car. I've had it for going on 2 years and haven't regretted it one time. I will say, it's not the kind of car that's going to knock your socks off. It is a slow burn kind of car. You have to get used to it and really appreciate how it fits into your life. It's really not meant for the racetrack. It is absolutely meant for being a daily driven, super sport, hot hatch, and it excels in that. That's nothing else I can say. I mean, I think a guy in my position actually buying something is probably the strongest endorsement you can give, right, Charles?
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, go out and buy one. You won't regret it.